Well, this is the Resolve Podcast, where we talk through biblical truths that help us to become resolved to live well. I'm Logan, and today I've got Jared with me.
Hey.
I'm so excited to have Jared today. Jared has been with us, a year?
A little over a year.
A little over a year.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. If you don't know Jared is our kids pastor and is doing a fantastic job. I've got 2 kids in his ministry, and they absolutely adore him. And I know a lot of kids do. So
And now they speak funny.
And now they do.
Yeah. I have changed Parkway Hills in that our kids don't say the letter T anymore if it's in the middle of a word.
They sure do.
They all say water bottle and amen when they finish praying. So it's been great.
So with that, Jared, give us a little bit of background history on why do you talk funny and all.
No, you guys talk funny.
Yeah,
actually.
we do.
I got
Okay.
off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
So I'm from the northeast of England. Grew up in the most amazing city in the world called Newcastle. Literally called that because the Romans saw Newcastle, and that's where it got its name. There was an old castle. It's not there anymore. So grew up there, spent most of my life in England. Background was in education, so trained to be a school teacher. Absolutely loved math, which people either love math or hate math, but I'm in the firmly I love math camp.
It's a small camp.
It is a very small camp, but I don't mind saying it. So I love math, taught math in public schools, felt a kind of pull towards ministry, did several internships with a church in Fort Worth that my church in England had a connection with, and then ended up moving here in 2017. Started out in kids ministry. Also got married, so started out new career, new side of the world to live on, and started out married in 3 months. And so
Wow.
it was a whirlwind of a transition, but it was awesome. So met Casey through that partnership with the church, moved here 2017, and have been in kids ministry since then. Love getting to do what I do. It's amazing that I can do this as a job. Never could have dreamed of that growing up in England. It's a much different landscape back home, and some of that kind of influences our conversation today, just
Yeah.
in terms of what kids are facing. But absolutely love getting to do that. I have the opportunity to travel with Lifeway and with the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention and have conversations with churches and volunteers to try and equip and encourage them. And so God has been kind to pour into me and allow me now to pour into others. And so I'm grateful that I get to be here at Parkway Hills and do that.
That's awesome. Okay, so brought Jared in today because we're going to be talking through how to train your kids up with a biblical worldview. And Jared, before we kind of dive into that topic, I'd love, because hearing your story and knowing your background and not knowing as much about the church in England, I'm sure that weighs huge into wanting to train our kids in a biblical worldview, because you, I would assume, grew up in a pretty post-Christian culture.
Right.
So kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
I think-
what does the world in England look like just across the pond?
Yeah, across the pond. I tell people I grew up in way East Texas. You just keep going east and you get to England. But it is interesting in that I feel like in some ways the culture in England maybe is 5-10 years ahead of where America had been in terms of shifts with government policies, with worldview of the country as a whole. And so some of the challenges that kind of the United States is walking through now are things that maybe we've seen. Maybe issues that are up for debate now are issues that are settled back home, and sadly against what the word of the Lord would say. But just seeing that those are the kind of the messages and the norms of the culture and what's accepted. It is interesting in that in the church in England, people are very much in or out. There's no kind of gray area. There's no, I'll take a little bit of Christianity. It's kind of like you're all for it or you're not. And so seeing those that are all for it, like how do they live out their faith in a culture that is so opposed to it in many ways? And I think we're seeing more and more of that. Our families are feeling more and more of that here. It's permeating into decisions on what do we do for school? How do we handle these things? And so I think England is in some sense a glimpse into where America is heading. And so that kind of has helped me realize that for our kids, I firmly believe that what we're doing is important discipleship, just as important discipleship as all other areas of the church. And so with that, we need to have that same emphasis on this is a big deal. We need to prepare these kids because they're entering into a world where they're getting messages from everywhere. And that's kind of what we're going to get at, is that they're hearing different things and they're learning different things and they're growing in their worldview, whether you're influencing it or not. And so it's our job to try and, as much as we can, point them to what the word would say and have a Christian worldview form rather than what the world around them would say.
Right. So let's define what worldview is, because we use this word it's kind of a churchy word.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really use that outside of a religious context as
Agreed.
much, but everyone has a worldview.
Mm-hmm.
So a biblical worldview is what we're trying to inform our young people, and
Mm-hmm.
not young people.
Yeah.
I saw a statistic that I think it was Barna research statistic that said maybe only 4% of the Christian population operate under a true biblical worldview,
Mm-hmm.
which is staggering. And that's probably an old statistic. The church is getting better at that. But a worldview is what?
Yeah, so I think you hit a good point. Everyone has a worldview. I think the church generally acknowledges that because they realize what's going on. I think maybe people outside of the church still have a worldview but won't realize that that's what's happening. And so it's really the lens through which you view the world, you approach decisions you're made, you're trying to think what is right in this situation. Is there right in this situation? I mean, you kind of hit the Barna research. They had one in 2023 that came out, and it was, I think, around only 1 in 5 preteens believed there was absolute moral truth.
Hmm.
So it's 1 in 5. And that was not even saying that, like, the word, the Bible define it was just that it exists. And honestly, the stats aren't increasingly much better for parents or even for people in ministry. Like the church as a whole, I think, has departed from really believing that we have to take the word as it is versus taking bits and pieces of it. And so that's where the biblical worldview is so important to help our kids and again, like you said, not just kids, it's adults too, understand that like the word defines what is good, and that defines how we should view the world and how we should engage with it.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say a worldview is most simply stated the lens, what you said a second ago, the lens in which you look at and process through the world, the process through how you interact with the world, the decisions that you make. It is the lens in which you look at all of those. So a biblical worldview is processing the world through the lens of Scripture. And that's probably why that statistic is so low.
Yeah.
Because we kind of live in a biblically illiterate culture.
I totally agree.
So-
And worldview is influenced by, if you're thinking kids, their school, their friends, family, technology, media. There's so many things that are influencing it. And if we want them to have a biblical worldview, we need to make sure the Bible is what's primarily influencing that. Or there's conversations happening around there's something that might not sound bad, but really it's leading you away from the word. And we need to have that kind of grounding to bring them back. And kids on the preschool side and younger elementary, they can't do that for themselves. We're training them up for it. But they need us as church leaders, as volunteers, teachers in kids ministry, parents, those around them to help encourage them what is good and right. And that there is good and right to begin with. Because our world doesn't like I said, that stat on absolute moral truth, it's, kind of your truth, my truth. People don't recognize that there is truth. And so for our kids, we need to point them to that.
I mean, it's hard to stand up in today's culture, whether you're a kid or an adult, to say, no, there is an absolute right and wrong. And it's hard to be bold about that because you're afraid of some sort of backlash. But okay, so I don't know if you know this. He mentioned it earlier, but Jared does a lot of trainings with the Southern Baptists of Texas Convention as well as Lifeway, and he gets to speak on these topics all the time. So this is something that he's prepared and he has taught on before, but I asked him to come today and kind of help us work through that as parents, because typically you're talking to church leaders and how to influence kids, but we're going to adapt that a little bit for parents today. So, Jared, here we go.
Yeah.
How do we teach and train our kids in a biblical worldview?
I want to start out a little on kind of painting the picture of where our kids are at, what's going on, and parents will know where their kids are at, but it might give you a glimpse of what's around the corner. Couple things that I think have been significant in shaping our kids' worldview right now. One was COVID, the post-COVID world. It's really, honestly, our younger kids aren't seeing the personal effects of that too much. That some of them weren't even born when that happened, which is wild to me to think that. But then some, so it might be ripples. Some are like our older elementary kids. Those current kind of 4th through 6th graders. They were pre-K through first when it hit, and so for them, they missed a ton of foundational time in school, like the building of relationships, growing socially, just understanding how to engage with other people. That hit them a ton.
Mm.
And so there's an element of fear that seeped in through that. There's an element of distance and disconnection that seeped in. And so that's one thing that's kind of affecting worldview. Another thing is kids are digital natives. I was looking at some research on technology phasing in and phasing out. And apparently, there's an Australian research firm that predicted 2025 is the year that the analog wristwatch will phase out. Which I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know if that's. I think there's a little bit on. Sometimes it's like, man, this is too much. We need to go back to old school. I don't think analog's dying. But you think of like in our life, like we're not that old, right?
No, yeah.
No, we're young, sprightly things.
But I'm not wearing
That's
an
why I have
analog
a
watch.
huge cold brew.
Yeah.
But we you think of like things that came and went. Like I remember dial-up internet coming out and being a thing, and like you couldn't use the landline if you wanted to use the internet, and then you had the really loud beeping and screeching, and like, well, that's gone. Like that's not a thing. And like desktop computers. Like I remember being in school and like we got these computer things. And it was like, this is awesome, and they were giant, and they were on this cart you'd roll in, and now like we carry them everywhere, and so technology is coming and going, and our kids are just growing up accustomed to it. My son, so I like having smart things in my home. I'm lazy, so I like
You're not
when
you're
I
not lazy, you're proficient.
yes, like when
Yeah.
I get into bed and there's a light left on. Do I really want to have to get up? Like no, because I'm gonna have to get up a lot with babies in the night, anyways. But so we have smart light switches everywhere, smart everything. And David, my son, who's 2, has picked up on that. And so David tries to talk to Alexa, and so he'll be like, "Wexa, turn on the TV," and it's adorable. And like 3 times he's managed to get Alexa to listen to him. Like he's 2, like, but this is what he's growing up in, which is just it's hard to even comprehend because that's so far from I think where we were growing up. That then plays into another element that is hurting kids. Jonathan Haidt came out with a book, The Anxious Generation,
Yes.
and that has massively. He's a secular author, but that has given him an audience into schools, and so schools, churches are picking up on this. I think that's why we're seeing a wave this school year of some schools going phone free. And he said, hold off on smartphones till high school, hold off on social media till 16, phone free schools. And a lot of that is in his research recognizing access to technology having a negative impact on mental health and in our context really forming and shaping worldview. You think of things that for us were probably things we encountered in high school are things that are being encountered in elementary school right now. If you look at issues of gender, I don't even know how old I was when I first encountered like the idea of there being more than 2 genders. What is that about? But like you look now, like kids in elementary school are coming up again. I don't know what I'm saying there. Kids in elementary school are
Being
like
faced,
encountering,
yeah.
like they're being faced with like, and the fact that like sex is different from expression, which is different from attraction, which is different from identity, and they can all be on these different continuums, and they don't all have to be in the same place, or they might not be on a continuum at all. Like there's so much, and it's like this is so confusing. And so
Well, and that makes absolute truth look really squishy
yes,
for our kids
exactly.
because there's never been a prevailing culture that says this is what is right.
Well, and clearly counter to the word of God is real simple on how that looks, and what we're seeing now is that our kids are being told, no, it's not that simple. And so that's 2 very different worldviews, and some of it is direct, and some of it is subtle in terms of what kids might see or notice on TV or just hear something, and it can be subtle and small to where we might not notice it, but it's still forming our kids. And I think with all of those things, technology especially ties into mental health. We're seeing it's again, I don't know how old I was when I really knew what the word anxiety meant. I would anticipate it was probably middle school that I really grasped what that meant. And I've had kids in younger elementary school that are struggling with anxiety and can name it, and it is real. I see it. They're struggling. I was looking at some more research coming out of Jonathan Haidt's book, and he was looking at data from 2010 and then 2020. And some of the data from 2020 was kind of collected before COVID, and so I think it probably could even be higher. We had over 30% of girls and 10% of boys would say they had a significant depressive episode within the last year.
Wow.
And that was up 145% for girls and 161% for boys in that 10-year span. Anxiety is rampant. The age of onset is somewhere around 6 to 8 years old. It's twice as likely in girls. But even he cited the rates of emergency room visits for 10 to 14-year-olds. It's gone up 188% for girls related to self-harm. 10 to
Oh.
14. And 48% in boys. Suicide within the same age group is increased by 167% for girls, 91% for boys. And so, like, our kids are struggling.
And you're talking about this is a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
This is from when you and I would have graduated high school to 2020,
Right.
right before COVID even happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the stats for COVID have been
Exactly.
I mean, so I teach at a university level, and I can remember several waves of students coming through after COVID that have they missed their high school experiences
Mhm.
because of the craziness of it. And that has only increased in social anxiety, that has only increased in like actual academic anxiety as well.
Mhm.
That's
So this
whew.
is the world that our kids are growing up in, and as we're trying to guide them to stand on the word and to have that biblical worldview, this is all the messages they're hearing. These are everything's going on around them. These are things that are personally affecting a lot of them. There's an Australian research firm called McCrindle, and they brought up a couple things on. One was that kids are up aging, and so that was the idea that they're becoming psychologically, sometimes even maybe physiologically older than they actually are because of exposure to technology. Again,
Wow.
what they are able to see and experience. You think of porn, like the reality is like that probably in my life came up as something I was exposed to in high school. It'd be amazing now if there's a kid that waits to high school to be exposed to that.
I
It's
think
not happening now.
the stat we've had a couple of parent summits and really good qualified speakers come in and talk through this stuff, and the average age to pornography exposure is 10 years old.
Yeah, 7 to 10 is what I read the other day. Like it's
7
an
to
elementary
10.
school issue.
I have a 7-year-old.
Yeah. It's frightening.
Ugh.
But that's kind of, and so it's looking at kids are being almost forced to operate at an older age than they are because of what they're being exposed to. Um and a big part of that, and that's why the technology thing is a conversation worth having, is that you think when we were growing up, there would be people that were gatekeeping the knowledge in
Mm.
some sense. We didn't just have access to it. It would be through a trusted adult, or you'd be allowed to experience something because of a trusted adult. And now for our kids, if they've got access to the internet, then there's no gatekeeping of that knowledge. There's no helping them filter what's true and good and right. And even if you as a parent are doing your job and the way that you feel is okay, we're not going to do a cell phone until this age. Well, if they're in school with someone else and their parents are doing whatever, then they still could get exposed to all that. And so it's just so challenging in terms
Mm.
of kids just aren't developed enough to handle what they're having to handle.
Yeah.
And so that's a real challenging one for us.
Well, and the ubiquity of technology, jumping out of kids for a second, even just for us as adults and Christians. I was talking with a friend the other day that he sent me a YouTube video, and it was this guy that was talking about how Peter had denied Jesus, and how like his denial of Jesus, he was cursing when he denied Jesus, and so we give platform to these people who have no vetting, just like you're saying. And
Mhm.
so it's so easy even for us to watch something and to believe that it's true, when the truth of something could be twisted. When that person on YouTube was trying to say that, if you curse, it separates you from Jesus. And then the whole, clickbait was, well, I'm never going to curse again, like use a curse
Mhm.
word. And I was like, hold on, buddy, this is not what this is actually talking about. But if we as adults who are supposed to be able to filter through those things, fall victim to it, then our kids who
Yeah.
literally aren't mentally developed. I mean,
Yeah.
we
They can't, they're not developed enough to make those decisions and to filter those things. And so it's our job as parents, as church leaders, to help them with that. But that's what we're up against. Like that's wild. And I think kind of recognizing that there is so much going on in our world. There is so much shaping and forming our kids, whether we're aware of it or not. And so that's why, like, I take what I do seriously. That's
Mm.
why, like, man, like we are not providing childcare. Like we are discipling these kids because they need it, because they're up against so much. And because if they're going to have a lifetime of faithfulness, what we do when they're 1 year old really matters. And so with our kids, that's kind of what's going to lead us on to the next kind of area of our discussion, is that they can handle more than we think they can spiritually. It's not that, okay, we'll wait until they get to like high school and then we can really start diving into this stuff. Or we'll wait till they're in middle school and then like, no, like forget that. Like we need to be having these conversations now. And we need to be trying to point them to the word now so that they can grow up and build their life on it. And so, I mean, even like younger preschoolers, like I'm thinking like kids that are like your infants, your babies, your crawlers, early walkers, like real little ones, like the way we care for them at church, the way you care for them at home, like meeting their physical needs is forming a foundation of their faith. And it sounds crazy that like changing a diaper could play a role in the kingdom, but it really does. And man, I've been doing a lot of kingdom work in my house lately. But it is like the way we meet those needs and care for them, they're learning that we love them, we trust them, and they will in time learn that God loves them, God trusts them. When we sing a little song, like all of those things are making a difference. My son David, like he has several songs that he knows that he's picked up at our preschool or our weekday preschool. And he's like just singing them on his own. And I'm like, yes, that is awesome. Like let that take root in your heart. And he's 2. Middle preschoolers, they're learning more and more. They're hearing like, I hear this word Jesus a lot. Like Jesus must be special. Like that's how they're thinking. And that's awesome, right? They're still very concrete in their thinking. But they're hearing that the church, like, man, Miss Peggy, she says church a lot. Like church must be special. They're hearing this stuff, which is incredible. And then by the time they get to older preschool, they're in their own little adorable way, they're starting to try and make applications for the Bible verses. When you ask them a question and they hear something, then they're able to, like this last Sunday, we had Pop-Tarts and promotion. And the
huge success, by the way.
Yes.
10 out of 10.
The Bible story was about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And so the challenge to preschool was to help and serve others. And so we're asking those questions, and those older preschoolers are thinking through like, okay, I've heard this. I've heard what Jesus did. How do I go and do that? And they're thinking through that. And that's awesome. Like they're doing that at 4 and 5. Like, praise the Lord. That is exciting. And that gets me excited.
Yeah.
I guess, like, that's great. And so we're talking like even in preschool, like they have the ability to engage with spiritual things. They have the ability to try and figure out, how does this conversation, this thing I heard about Jesus, have anything to do with my life and the world? And they're starting to kind of toy around with that.
Yeah.
And so that's why we can't wait until they're older to have all these conversations.
Can I rewind us a little bit? Because you talked on music. Yes. I'm mildly passionate about music.
I didn't know.
It's,
I didn't know you could be mildly passionate. You seem like you're very passionate.
Yeah, I'm either all in or all out.
Yes.
But that is huge. That's something we've noticed. And Brooke, my wife, is so great at, especially when our kids were younger, teaching our kids doxology and theology through songs. And so we had this little playlist that taught through different catechisms. Like, my kids can sing to you, what do justification and sanctification mean? And they know that. They had this other song that was literally walking through the big 40 events of the Bible. And so my kids were able to give a biblical narrative from creation all the way to Jesus coming back again, and kind of give the big context. And that played out in huge ways, because when we were reading the scripture, the kids will sit there and be like, oh, this is in the exiles. When the nation of Israel is exiled in Babylon, we know what's happening here. And all it takes is just listening to these fun little songs, and you get to teach theology through music. And by the way, that doesn't stop with kids. That's what my goal is with worship ministry. And that is, it's a slow and steady growth, but it is so good. So parents, if you're listening to this, if you need those resources, reach out to me. I've got tons of songs that we have just used personally in our home that teach doctrine and catechisms and all sorts of fun little things that will stick not only with your kids, but also with you. And I've memorized so much scripture just listening to these little songs that the kids sing. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, and it's I also interesting you say you've had songs that have been talking about like justification, sanctification. Like, our preschoolers can handle that. Like, those are big words, but like those concepts, like the reality is our preschoolers are still very concrete thinkers, but that doesn't mean we should shy from having conversations about the abstract with them, because they will take little bits and pieces so that at the right time they eventually come to understand it.
Yeah.
And like Lila may ask you a question and you may give her an answer, and it might be above her head because she's asking a question about the Trinity. And like the Trinity's hard.
I've never heard it explained correctly.
You might give her an answer, and like she might like choose to accept that answer because she trusts that you believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Like she might not in her age be able to comprehend exactly what you've said, but she knows that you believe that and that she trusts you, and so that answer is acceptable to her.
Yeah.
And so that's why those conversations about those topics, training them in like, what does that mean? What is justification? What is sanctification? Those conversations can be had in preschool, because at the right time, those pieces will come together to where like, okay, yeah.
And it comes up all the time in our, like, we'll talk about what, there's another song that, where is God? Well, God is everywhere. Can you see God? No, but God can see me. And that helps with like going to bed and feeling scared to be in bed alone. Like just the small things that you become spiritually natural over time when you choose to fill yourself and fill your kids with those things, other than, versus Fortnite.
Yeah. And that, I mean,
not the dog on Fortnite. Fortnite's fine, I guess. But
for kids, it's so important knowing that there's so many voices and so many things feeding into them. Like don't underestimate the value of having that song going in the car. Like that, like when I would drive David to school on a morning, I love it. Like it's like 50 minutes from where we live, but it's like that's 50 minutes I get to spend with my son. We have I usually play some VBS music. I kind of like VBS. We'll listen to the VBS album 3 times through until he's like, okay, I need something else. And then we'll put on like the Bible, like all that. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's training them up and it's equipping them, for when they face things, when they're beginning to realize like, oh, when I am scared, I can sing this song, and this song reminds me that God is present. He's near. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Moving to elementary, kind of, which is the other side of yours, parenting, the younger kids, the kind of first and second grade, they're really beginning to have a grasp of sin. They're beginning to see things in the world around them, see brokenness. Generally, first and second grade, younger elementary kids, it's really, and we as adults are the same. It's easy to see sin out there. It's harder to see sin on the inside. So on the younger elementary side, they're seeing sin, but it's mostly outward. And then they start to, as they get older, begin to realize their own sin in their life. And as they get to kind of real older elementary, they're really starting to take ownership of their faith. And this is kind of, those elementary years are really where the worldview formation is happening in an accelerated rate. We've kind of fed into it in preschool. There's bits and pieces that's building blocks. And as kids get into the older half of elementary, they're starting to almost pull from those things and begin to put together, okay, this is how I need to act when this situation comes up at my friend's house. Or when this thing happens in math class, like I'm beginning to see this thing that I heard from the Bible, or this thing that I know, this actually tells me what to do here. And as they get to that older elementary, that 4th, 5th, 6th grade, that's when they're really kind of beginning to develop this worldview in a way that it's starting to get feet put to it a little bit more. And some of that is because it's getting to the point where their faith is, I'd say, more of a personal faith than an inherited faith. And I mean, not as in you can't inherit salvation, but as in it's really starting to become their own.
Right.
Those questions they're asking mean a lot. They could ask a question like, why does God allow suffering? And a 5-year-old might ask you that, and you might give an answer, and then they're like, okay. And then they just go off and start playing with their Lego again. But like a 10, 11, 12-year-old asks that question, and they really mean, because it's weighing on them. Like, why does this happen? And that provides us the opportunity to not kind of just give them a short answer, but really try and engage in conversation with them about why this does happen. What do we do? How do we navigate this? What does the Bible say? What do you know to be true from the Bible? And because the reality is they're hearing all of these other things. I love Disney. I don't know if y'all in your household have been Disney fans.
Oh, yeah.
I'd imagine there's been a lot of Disney. I love Disney. I love songs. Like, I don't know, like, I like musicals. Like, I don't watch musicals often, but whenever I do, I'm like, this is awesome. It's like Disney. My favorite Disney movie is Finding Nemo.
Oh, that's a good one.
Classic. Casey's is Tangled. Recent favorite is Moana, just because the music is...
The music's so good.
So
Moana
good.
2?
Yeah, I know. Not as good. Music's
yeah.
good. Frozen, like Frozen 2. Like, Walmart would play the Frozen 2 soundtrack, and I would sing it as loud as I could just to embarrass Casey. Like the Into the Unknown, like it's amazing. And so like I love Disney, but there's also a reality on like you listen to it, like what is Disney teaching? And it can be stuff that sounds good, like chasing your dreams and trying your best, push through the bad, like, but all of those things are teaching worldview.
Sure is.
And so and it's not to view everything as the enemy and to be scared of everything, but just to recognize like all of these things are influencing our kids. And so that's why what we do at church, what we do at home is so important.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to what I said. Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
I don't know how much material you have left, but I'd love to, if we can, pause here and pick it up on another episode.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
That's okay.
Okay.
I'll wrap it up, just kind of finishing this
wrap
section.
this piece up.
Like we said, that just to leave you, 1 in 5 kids, 8 to 12, believe in absolute moral truth. That was what came out of that Barna. So that is not 1 in 5 believe that the Bible is absolute truth. It's just that it exists, period. And so that's kind of an demonstration of what the impact of society in our world is on our kids. They're exposed to these adult themes, these adult pressures earlier than in the past. And so that discipleship that we have at the home and the church is so important because we know there is absolute moral truth.
Yep.
And we know what the word teaches. And we need to keep spending time in the word to grow in it because those kids need authenticity coming out of us, not just the kind of real short church answer, but like to actually engage in that conversation if they're going to develop that worldview.
Yeah, it's huge. Okay, so we leave every episode, we leave something for you guys to work on because we don't want this to just be sit and listen and feel good about yourself and leave. Although I don't know how you really feel good about walking. This is heavy stuff. I mean, it's important, but it's heavy. I think my encouragement for you, if you're a parent listening to this, or if you're a grandparent listening to this, on the last episode that we did with Josh, we talked about Matthew chapter 4. Follow me, I will make you fishers of men. And how important it is for us to be abiding and following Christ ourselves. And Jared just hinted at that and touched on that, of if we are not walking our own, how are we going to influence where our kids are going to go? Our kids are looking for someone to lead them. And if it's not you, they will find someone else.
Yeah.
And so my encouragement to you is not only just to lock in your own daily devotional, which is massive for your spiritual walk, but to figure out a rhythm with your kids, to sit down and talk through spiritual things, to talk through biblical concepts. And that could be once a week. That could be once every other week. At some point, you need to find that rhythm. And so go do that. Find a rhythm, sit down, just embrace the awkward with your family and say, hey, we're going to do something new. And it's going to feel awkward, but we need to do this together. So that's my encouragement for this episode. But we will see you guys on the next one. We're going to continue this conversation. Yeah. It's been super good. So we'll see you then.
See you soon.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Our deepest desire is that you would know Jesus and walk with him daily. If you want to know more about what that might look like, you can text PH Life to 77411. If you'd like to know more about Parkway Hills, visit our website at parkwayhills.org. We'll see you next time on the Resolved Podcast.